listening to Preston and Steve.
Preston and Steve.
On 93.3 WMMR. MMR rocks now.
Our next guest is a huge part of pop culture.
Yes.
And
huge part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the most recognizable voices in the world. And in fact, and Casey brought this to my attention. I was not aware. Was this live, I assume, Casey?
This is live when Fish had their first reunion back in 2003. They like to do something called a vocal jam, where they just kind of, make sounds and beats with their voices.
Right.
And it took me a little bit, but I'm like, are they singing George Takei?
Yeah.
And they did for about 3.5 minutes.
This is a little clip of it.
That's what they're singing.
Over and over, nonstop, like shoot yourself in the head.
And a mispronunciation.
Yes, exactly. Please welcome George Takei.
Hi, good to be here with you.
Good to have you here, George.
And it's a delight to have you pronounce my name properly.
Thank you. It's I'm sure it's flattering, though. I mean, they didn't mean to mispronounce
No, I'm
your
sure.
names.
And I don't object to Takei either, because Takei is a legitimate Japanese word.
Okay.
Which translates into English as expensive.
Ooh. Expensive.
So I'm going to have to send them a billing.
George, it's my understanding that you did dubbing work when you were a teenager and would dub much older voices. You were dubbing films that were being brought over from Japan to the United States, and you were dubbing the dialogue.
That's right. As a matter of fact,
so you've
that
always
was my
had
first gig.
Really? So this was always your voice?
This is my voice,
yeah.
but I can do other voices too.
All right.
What do you want to know, bald-headed young man?
Right. So you do your character stuff as well, but I mean, right out of the gate, you were able to nail that tone and get these gigs.
Well, when I was beginning, it was stop and go.
Okay.
But I worked with some of the best people like Paul Frees.
Oh, right. Yes, familiar. Yeah.
So I learned under some of the masters.
How many times have you used your voice on episodes of The Simpsons? Because it's fairly frequently, hasn't it been?
No, not that often. I think about 3 or 4 times.
That's it.
As once as a Chinese waiter, another time as a Japanese game show host,
Right.
Another time as a flight attendant,
right,
and another time as captain of a ship of a plane.
Okay,
but a few times.
And what, obviously, we hear about James Earl Jones, who scores obviously major voice gigs and does the stuff with CNN.
This is CNN.
Right. Yes. What would we have heard you on? Have you done anything on that order of a national level as well? Because your voice is so distinct.
Not really.
Yeah.
I've done, films like Mulan.
Okay.
And Mulan 2. And listen to Saturday morning cartoons, and you'll hear many of my voices. But
that's cool.
One distinctive one like James Earl Jones,
right,
on CNN.
Had you done anything with Avatar, the Last Airbender? Because you would be perfect for that.
I don't know whether I'm supposed to talk about it or not.
Ooh,
but
yes.
you're getting a breaking news.
An
I
exclusive.
will be doing.
Really?
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Wow. And that's the
M. Night Shyamalan.
M. Night Shyamalan directing that. Is that the one, or are you talking
I'm
about?
not supposed to talk about it.
So we're going to first time we meet George Takei, we're going to get him in trouble. So. But you're here in town, obviously, for the Star Trek exhibit and for this, which I went to and I think is fantastic.
It's fabulous,
yeah,
isn't it?
It is great.
Now, listen, I went through the exhibit with Steve, and I'm not as familiar with the TV show.
You're much too young.
Right. But
you know that Star Trek now is 43 years old.
Is it really? Wow.
We first went on the air back in 1966, and I don't think you were around then.
No.
You were born after we were canceled.
75, yeah. So,
70, way after we were canceled.
Right? Yeah, so all I know is the movies, but it was really cool going through the exhibit with Steve, because you turned into a little kid. You're like, this is from this? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm an old bastard, and I remember clearly. I remember in fact, I believe, one of the early episodes of The Naked Time, which I think might be your
my favorite
episode.
Yes.
And I remember my father, I was jumping around like a little crazy kid, and he said, hey, watch this. It's got space in it. Shut up. And little did he know that he had set his, because he always used to call Star Trek the underwear show.
The underwear.
Because it looked like they were wearing underwear.
I see.
And
our uniform.
Right. So I tortured him all the days.
Well, as it turned out, that became the uniform that we loved because you know what we wore in the very first Star Trek movie.
They were very ill-fitting, right? Yeah.
No, they were very good fitting, skin tight.
Oh, okay.
And one piece with even the shoes attached. And the zipper went up the back and ended around here.
Yeah, that's not good.
So, we're organic creatures. We have the law of nature. We're biological animals.
Yeah.
And every so often, we have to answer Mother Nature's call.
Right.
Grown men and women couldn't go to the bathroom by ourselves. We had to go with our dressers and do this wiggle thing to half undress to answer Mother Nature's call.
I heard that they, like with the very elaborate costumes that some of the women would wear on the show, they had to literally,
or the lack thereof
had to be sewn into, and it was the same situation. They had to cut them and then let them go to the bathroom and then re-sew them.
You have studied the show well.
Yeah, I'd say so. And you're by the way, you're always, as far as the legend goes, of the most approachable and nice people associated with the show.
You're very observant.
Yeah. You get major kudos, and that you still enjoy doing the conventions and stuff.
Well, I think it's a responsibility and an honor for us because here we are, older than he is.
Yeah.
43 years old now, 43 years old now. And, the Star Trek phenomenon is still going on. The new movie that came out is terrific, and it exploded at the box office, broke all records, and it's the fans that gave us this longevity. So we need to go to the conventions and personally thank them all.
That was easily my favorite film of the year so far. I just fell in love with it.
Fantastic.
I thought it did great respect to the original series. It was written very smartly. It reinvigorated the series as well.
The actors were fantastic.
They were amazing. And they got kind of a retro future look, if that makes any sense at all.
They returned to the original costumes too,
right.
which is good. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is it interesting having somebody like John Cho play essentially you because you created Sulu?
Didn't I look dashing and handsome as a youngster?
Yes, you did.
Hey, do you get paid for that? Because the Sulu is you, but do you see any of that?
And John?
Yeah.
No.
Do you get any money for that movie?
Oh,
even though you weren't in it?
Paramount owns Sulu.
Okay.
So I own my face, but the name and my face in Star Trek context is owned by Paramount.
Okay.
I'm just surprised. Well, Leonard Nimoy obviously made it into the film. Was there ever a point at which they approached you for doing a cameo?
Well, there was an interesting thing that happened when J.J. Abrams, the director, was casting for the film.
Right.
His office called me and said, would I meet J.J. for breakfast?
Okay.
And I thought, well, maybe. And so with fantasy dancing in my mind, I went to have breakfast with him. He's a fascinating guy, a lot of ideas, a lot of energy. But the reason why he wanted to meet me was he had a dilemma. He said he's been looking at dozens of Asian American actors.
Right.
But he particularly wanted to find a Japanese American actor because I'm Japanese American, and he wanted to keep that consistency. But he said the actor that he's leaning toward is not Japanese American. And I said, well, is he Asian? And he said, yes, he is. And then I told him, as long as he's Asian, that's all that matters. But I see that you really don't know Gene Roddenberry's philosophy, because Gene Roddenberry wanted each of us on the bridge of the Enterprise to represent different parts of the Earth.
Right.
And his philosophy was infinite diversity and infinite combinations. People from this planet coming together. And I was to represent Asia. The character was to represent Asia.
Not the band.
No. The whole region of this planet.
Yeah.
Right.
And the problem that Gene Roddenberry had was to find a name for this Asian character, because all Asian names are nationally specific.
Yes.
Like Takei is Japanese.
Right.
Wong is Chinese. Kim is Korean. Nguyen is Vietnamese. And Asia has a turbulent history of warfare and colonization, and he didn't want to bring that in. And so he wanted to find a Pan-Asian name. And he was staring at the map of Asia, and he found between the Philippines and Vietnam the Sulu Sea. And he thought, the waters of a sea touch all shores.
Wow. That's cool.
And that's how he came up with the name Sulu.
Okay.
And I told him, told JJ, if you're thinking of someone who's Asian, not necessarily Japanese, but Asian, that's all that matters, because he's supposed to represent all of Asia. And that's how he felt confident and reassured to cast a Korean-American named John Cho.
Wow.
Who did a fantastic job.
Then you absolutely influence that. That's great.
Well, it's weird because, and you know how, along with the wonderful livelihood that the fans have afforded you over the years, people can get a little overly pedantic when it comes to things, and he caught some.
Pedantic? Oh my!
It was worth it just to hear the oh my. He caught crap for not being Japanese, you know, and we had him in the studio, and it's like, you know, people. I was at one of the conventions one time, and James Doohan was there, and
bless your heart, you go to conventions.
Oh yes, I do. I'm not screwing
are
around here.
A person of high standards and good taste.
And some fan was giving him crap over the plaid pattern of a tartan, I guess he was wearing in one episode, and you know, it's like, do you ever have a fan who just is a little too focused and a little too specific in the way they approach you?
But they tend to be some of the real truists, you know.
Yes, yeah.
But
AKA lunatics.
Well, you know, I respect every one of our fans.
Sure, yes.
And particularly those, because those are particularly dedicated.
Right, yes.
So I don't criticize them at all.
Right.
However, I tell them that I just punched in and punched out at Paramount Studios.
Right.
I worked there.
It was your job.
The real consultants, I tell them, I travel with at these conventions, and they're the ones that know the real reason why. And so when they come up with these picky, detailed questions, I look to the audience and I say, consultants, raise your hands, those of you that know the answer. And I pick one of them, and they have the answer for them. So that solves the problem.
I have to ask you, because, you know, the whole relationship, one of the most famous things to come out of all of this stuff is your relationship with William Shatner, and it always seems to be in a state of flux. Where do you guys stand now?
Well, I got him to pronouncing my name properly. For 40 years, I've been telling him it's Takei, and he keeps insisting on pronouncing it Takei.
Right, yes.
So, you know, I couldn't get it into his head. So I told him at that roast that we had,
which
Bill,
you were phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Again, your good taste. I told him, Bill, it's Takei. It rhymes with toupee. Oh! And he's never forgotten it. But I noticed that every time he has to say my last name, his eyeballs goes up. And he says, there's a pregnant pause, and then he says, Takei.
That's brilliant.
We also heard that
is brilliant.
And I'm sorry to geek out on you here, but I've heard all these things for years. That he would actually, you know, and God bless him, you know, everyone, you know, they contributed to a classic show, but we heard that he would literally count words in scripts to make sure that no one exceeded his word quotient for a particular episode. Is that true?
He was very dedicated to being Captain Kirk. Okay. And he wanted to make sure the captain was the captain.
Okay.
Well, do you think that he was insulted for not being asked to be in the Star Trek movie that came out this year?
You haven't been watching the internet, have you? He was grousing up and down.
Right. He was.
He was bad-mouthing poor J.J. Abrams for his lack of good taste. But, you know, Bill died in Star Trek 7.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, how he rationalizes that, God only knows. But Bill Shatner. God and Bill Shatner. That's the answer.
How was he as a director in Star Trek 5?
Star Trek 5 lost money.
Yeah.
All the other movies made money. Does that answer your question?
George, I remember sitting in a theater watching that movie. There was an 11-year-old in front of me, and then the kid gets up halfway through the movie, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, my God. And the kid stands up and goes, this sucks. I said, well, the kid...
Can I quote that to Bill?
George, on the set of the television show at that time, were your cast members aware that you were gay?
No.
No.
Near the end, they became, I got to be more comfortable with them. Mm-hmm. This was an interesting event when I knew that Walter knew.
Walter Koenig Chekhov?
Walter Koenig Chekhov. In the morning, we usually gathered at the coffee urn, and, we stood around gossiping and chit-chatting. And suddenly, Walter started making these head gestures like this, kind of urging me to turn around. Right. And so I turned around to look, and there was a group of male extras gathered, all dressed in that tight, form-fitting Star Trek uniform.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And there was one guy who was drop-dead gorgeous. I mean, and every defined pectoral muscle was being clung to by that shirt, And my heart stopped. And then I realized
Walter knew.
Yeah. And I knew that Walter knew.
Right.
And that's where I started to feel a bit more comfortable with cool. Walter.
But within the community, so to speak, for lack of a better term, you never kept it a secret. You formally announced it at a point, but it was never something that you were holding in, correct?
Well, to be honest, I was closeted in the early part of my career because, as a young actor, ambitious actor, you want to be cast. And you go to a audition, and there are about a dozen other guys who look just like you and perhaps might be equally talented, although that's hard to believe. But they, might have cast the lesser talented guy.
Sure, yeah.
Because he had the look or the whatever. And they give you all these reasons, too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, too old, too young. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to have them add another to this or to that.
Well, and being Asian also at the time was probably another barrier to get past.
Well, my competition was Asian.
Right.
Yeah. But there were fewer Asian roles. So, those few roles, you wanted to desperately get cast.
Sure.
Well, it's interesting because I have a friend of mine who's gay, who's, trying to break out in Hollywood. We have friends who do the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and I got him an audition with it, and as it turns out, he's too gay.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And the guy he's like, I don't know how to say this to your friend. If you want to tell him, then, go ahead and tell him. And so I think it was like last summer, I told him, and he's like, I get that all the time, and he's like, he's like, I got to go see like a vocal coach for this because, it's killing jobs for him because he doesn't want to just be cast as a gay man. He's he's an actor,
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you're not, an actual, astronaut.
Oh, you don't believe me? I failed.
Yeah.
But the thing is, straight actors don't get rejected because they're too straight.
Yeah.
Right.
It's only the gay ones. So, you wanted to eliminate that. So you keep that part. Your professional identity, closeted. But, I was, comfortable with my friends and the groups of friends. And I was a member of a gay running, club. That's where I met Brad, who's now my husband,
Congratulations with that.
Thank you very much.
Is that him over here sitting against
there he is. Yes, that's
very
Brad.
nice gentleman.
He was a marathoner back then.
Yeah.
And, so, I was out informally. But professionally, I was closeted. But, you when you're working a series and you get to know the people, like Walter, or Nichelle, who's my gal pal, you feel more comfortable. And so you start bringing at that time, Brad wasn't in my life, but, your boyfriends to, the rap parties.
Right.
And the first time you introduce them as, my friend, and they'll say, hi, good to meet you, Joe, or good to meet you, Al. But then, he comes next week. And the third time, and they're sophisticated people. They, say, George, I get it, And so, it was never spoken, but amongst my castmates.
Right.
It was known.
So through
and they
attrition,
were
yeah.
thoughtful enough to not really make a big thing of it. You know.
Well, I also have to comment because we loved you in Heroes.
Yeah.
Any
yes.
potential for a return, even though you kind of were crossed off the list there?
Yeah, after this, at the beginning of the second season.
Yeah. They
The
whacked
script
you.
arrived, and I'm falling off a high-rise building. And I thought, well, that was a good run, but that's it. And then a month later, another script arrives, and there I am.
Yeah.
Even younger. Because my son goes back and forth in time.
Right.
And the question I get asked frequently is, am I coming back?
Yes.
What the producers have told me is they want my appearances, or Kaito Nakamura's appearances, to be a surprise. In fact, even a shock. So I can't
Comment on
talk
it?
about
All right.
it, but I can't wink my eyes.
The prognosis is good. You are shown wielding a samurai sword in a number of the scenes, and
Yes.
then obviously in Star Trek you have the foils. Are you at all remotely adept with anything of that nature, or is that just all acting?
Well, when I was a kid, I saw Errol Flynn in the Adventures of Robin Hood.
Okay.
And I was swept away by that. I had my mother make me a Robin Hood costume. My backyard became Sherwood Forest,
Right.
And so when that script first was being talked about, I told the writer, and they had me wielding a samurai sword in Naked Time. And I said, well, I'm Japanese American, so a samurai sword is ethnically consistent. But I said, I'm a third generation Japanese American, and when I was a kid, I didn't play samurai. I told them the Errol Flynn story, and they asked me, "Oh, do you fence?" And I said, "It's my favorite sport." The only thing I'd done was, a kid pretending to be a fencer. That weekend, I was taking my first formal fencing lesson.
Right.
And the man that I found out of the Yellow Pages turned out to be the man who choreographed the fencing sequences in The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah,
There you
So
go.
full circle round.
Very cool.
As a child, I saw that and I was impressed by it. And professionally, the man I picked out of the Yellow Pages turned out to be the guy who choreographed.
That's great.
We've heard that, in Hollywood, maybe you have to lie sometimes. Like, yes, I am a professional horseback rider. And, and then that weekend you're
We
out
don't
riding.
lie. We just tell the truth before it becomes the truth.
Oh, man, I love that.
So this event at the Franklin Institute is it's a wedding, and I think we reviewed the winners. I think we might have been.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And we wanted to find someone who was really truly committed to it, and they're going to sort of renew their vows, I guess.
That's what I understand.
And what exactly is going to go down, and is the public able to see this?
Well, I'm told that I participate in their selection of a wedding cake.
Oh,
we
okay.
have a wedding cake tasting this afternoon.
All right.
But they haven't given me any more details. Maybe I better find out about it.
Okay. All right. We'll
what
get
I'm
the info.
supposed to do.
They just point you and you go. Yeah.
We'll get a link to the Franklin Institute and put that on our website, and people will be able to research that if they'd like.
Do we
to.
know how long the exhibit is
Yes,
going to remain?
it'll be there until the 20th of September.
Okay.
And today's the 20th of August. So they have exactly 1 month in which to catch that show.
It's well worth seeing. We dug it. I mean, I left with about a couple $100 worth of Star Trek toys.
Yeah, here he's got his enterprises here.
I get about 0.00017 cents of that.
Got your communicator.
There you go. Yeah. All my toys.
It's an adult male.
Well, George, this is what I
And
do.
I'm a doll too,
Yes, yeah.
We
We've
call
heard.
them action figures, but when I was a baby, people used to tell my mother that I'm a doll. Well, I'm a grown-up now, and I still am a doll.
Literally. Wow. George, it's an honor to meet you. Thank you for
Well,
coming by
thank you.
here.
It's an honor to be here with you.
We hope you enjoy your time in Philadelphia. Please give some love to George Takei.
Well, thank you, the city of brotherly love.
Awesome.